morning, everybody. Welcome back to an episode of Conscious Straight Talk with Katie and Lindsey.
Hi, my name is Katie Hutchinson, and I'm a licensed marriage and family therapist, and I'm also a certified mediator. And we're so happy to have you here on Hump Day. It's Hump Day, right?
Yes, it is. 2 more days to the weekend. I'm Lindsey Kearns. I'm the mama behind MalibuMamaLoves.com, and I'm also a certified conscious trauma-informed life coach. I almost said love coach again.
I don't know. She's into love. I don't think it really.
So we're going to have an interesting conversation today. Do you guys know somebody in your life that is constantly telling even little white lies? They're constantly embellishing, constantly making things bigger, and sometimes it's just like even just for fun. They're just things that are completely not true. These little lies. We want to talk about pathological lying today, you guys.
Yeah. So we refer to many politicians and celebrities as pathological liars. It's actually not a formal psychiatric diagnosis in the DSM-5, which is crazy to me.
Well, I think it's because it's an underlying condition for so many, right?
Well, yeah,
so many things. The thing with the pathological lying that gets me is, and we're talking like the true pathological liar, not just someone, that knows the truth here and there.
They're lying constantly.
It's like they fully believe themselves. Mm-hmm. There is no, they're not lying in their head. They have themselves so convinced of whatever it is. Even on a basic level.
I think so. I don't know if they're all like that, but I think that definitely could be a component.
Well, the fascinating thing is that psychologists and psychiatrists have been studying people who lie constantly since 1891. Probably even earlier than that. It's just we can't find the records. Right? But it's still not recognized as a diagnosis. Mm-hmm. Some people call it this deception syndrome. Mm-hmm. You told me of that. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's a great way to describe this group of people.
Yeah, I agree. I totally agree. Interestingly enough, most pathological liars aren't psychopaths, and they don't have personality disorders. Pathological liars often lie for no reason at all. Now, I'm going to give you some reasons why, but we'll get to that.
Well, and sometimes I feel like it's, with some people, it's an effort just to get you to believe that lie.
Yeah.
That will boost their self-esteem. See, I can get them to believe anything. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? So it's like that little bit of excitement. That's part of it. There's a lot of different elements to it. But and another bizarre feature of this is that pathological lying really leads to just crazy stories.
Yeah, really bizarre
insane
stories.
Stuff.
Yeah.
I know you've got a couple of examples.
Yes, so we'll talk about some of those. I personally think that pathological lying should definitely be in the DSM-5. I can't say that enough because it definitely should be a diagnosis. So I'm going to tell you about a story. Two psychologists recently did a study with 300 volunteers, and they found out that 8 to 13% of those people met the criteria for pathological lying.
And chronic lying. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And the study that Katie's talking about suggests that these pathological liars tell tall tales, and like we were saying, far-fetched and grandiose social connections to really boost their fragile self-esteem. And that's like what we were saying, like trying to get you to believe them so that they then feel like totally superior.
Yeah, exactly. In 2007, there was a study called Lorraine. Lorraine's dramatic lies included saying that that a colleague was sending her death threats all the time, that her 3-year-old child had burnt down their house, that her friend had a lesbian crush on her, and that a death threat was constantly coming in from her fiance's ex-girlfriend. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. Yes, threats from the fiance's ex-girlfriend. Yes, that's hard to say. The motives for her lies were not clear. Psychologists found that this was driven by this deep-seated psychological need to present herself as either the victim or the hero.
Mm-hmm. And what happened to her?
Well, her lies did not bode well for her. She ended up in a lockdown hospital. They call it a secure forensic unit.
Which we had to look up. And
we had to look it up.
So they're like, what is that?
Yeah.
But that's when a criminal is found guilty of something, but that is because of their mental illness.
Mm-hmm.
At the hospital, there is a secure forensic unit, and that's where these people stay.
I think that's where I'd rather be than in the general population. I don't know.
I don't know, because if you're locked with a group of mental illness people, I can't imagine. It's very nice.
Yeah.
Another study done in 2015 by a group of psychologists was all about another woman's pathological lies.
Mm-hmm.
And this woman came in and reported that she had made several suicide attempts. She said that her mother had been executed because she killed her father and her stepfather. She said that her brother and sister had been killed and were buried in the backyard by her mother.
Oh my gosh.
And lastly, that she had 2 children, one of which was the product of rape by her siblings.
Oh, lovely. Okay, so those are some crazy stories. Who did she tell these lies to?
Well, I'm assuming everybody, right? Because that's what these people are, very dramatic, and they want to get everybody to believe them so that they can feel better about themselves. Because as you said, they're hurting so deeply inside, right? But for this particular thing, she came into therapy and told her therapist these outlandish tales. I'm assuming the therapist went and researched and did the work, and turns out none of her stories were true.
Mm-hmm.
And why do you think that she felt the need to go to these levels, Katie?
Probably to show autonomy because she had no self-esteem.
Mm-hmm.
But I also believe that underneath all of this lying is just unhealed trauma from your childhood.
Yeah. We talk about that all the time, right? This unhealed trauma. So how do we deal with a pathological liar?
Well, that's hard to say because it's not even recognized as a diagnosis.
Yeah.
But it's important to not confront the person in a forceful or unsympathetic manner.
Mm-hmm.
It's also important to, if you're a therapist, to have a rapport and have been seeing this person for a while before you confront them.
I think you have to be very careful with that, right? Because they are so fragile, and you will be cracking their reality on some level by pointing out, like, whoa, none of that is true. Let's get you back to reality.
Right.
That's going to be a crack for them. That's going to be hard. So like you were saying, it's really important to not be confrontational and to ease them into that, right?
Yeah. Yep.
What does the therapist look for?
So once again, we're looking for a lack of self-esteem, early childhood trauma. We're looking at ways to productively address their self-esteem and their anxiety and so much more.
What would that look like? Finding productive ways to address their lying. What does that look like?
Well, first and foremost, they need to go to individual therapy. Second, I would discuss with the client, and like, instead of lying, I'm just making this up. Instead of lying about being an anthropologist, I'd look at the possibilities of a different career for this person. Can they actually manifest this? Are they miserable in their career and that's why they're lying about this? Why are they lying about being an anthropologist? But as a therapist, the most important thing is that you have to figure out that this person is lying. And that's hard to do unless they admit it. And they don't usually admit it. And as a therapist, I believe that when people come in, they're telling me the truth. But it's funny because my old superior, my old therapist, when I was an intern, she said that she always thought that everybody that came in was lying. Isn't that crazy?
Interesting.
Mm-hmm.
That's an interesting tactic to take, and then you have to like unravel them.
Yes, exactly.
And I would imagine that would be really hard for a therapist.
I mean, I believe everything they say.
Well, you
like
think
that.
because they're coming to you for help, so why come in here and waste the time and the money, right? But these pathological liars, like we were just saying, they're in a whole different reality, and that will crack them. So I think it's a matter of finding what personality disorder or what illness, what they're suffering from, that unhealed trauma, what needs to be healed, some underlying thing to be able to bring them safely back to that reality, right?
Right. Yeah. This is not a personality disorder, or it's not considered a psychiatric diagnosis. But in my opinion, it is a diagnosis. But it's not a personality disorder. That's a little bit different. So what would you
go there?
Okay. Okay, so the first thing is for the DSM-5 to recognize this pathology as a disorder that deserves a diagnosis.
Yeah.
Then I look at pathological lying as a cry for attention, negative or positive. Plus, they must have deep-seated insecurities to feel the need to lie. Sometimes the lies become so frequent and so constant that the person starts to believe their lies.
Well, a pathological liar does believe their own lies. I think that's what gets you into that category of pathological lying, is that you've hit a point where you believe what you're saying, even if it's so little as you ran out for gas, but you'll come back and say, oh, well, I just had to go run and drop some money off at the bank. And they'll try to get you to believe that.
Which is like, why?
They believe it.
Why?
But even on that small level, right?
Yeah.
So I totally agree the DSM needs to pick this up. I mean, it really should be a diagnosis. And there should be a lot more research done on pathological liars. Do you think everyone would be much happier if we had this diagnosis and some more criteria and guidelines for it?
Yes, I completely agree. I mean, I know a ton of like Asperger people, and yet they've taken that out of the DSM, and that's heartbreaking for me, because there really is a difference between people that have Asperger's and then really low functioning autism. So, you know, just we need to keep the discussion going. We'd love to hear your stories. If you have any friends, family members, yourself, whatever, that has a chronic lying issue, and we'd love to talk to you about it and hear about it.
Yeah. And, you know, you're not alone. Pathological liars are everywhere. We forgot to look up how many people this affects.
Yeah.
I bet it's not even reported.
Well, we don't know. I mean, just 8 to 13% out of
they were open to
people.
do that. But I feel like, you know, if you're dealing with that, reach out and get some help from somebody, because it's not going to get better. And I don't mean if you're the liar. I mean if you are in love with the liar, or if your child is a liar, or if you're working with a liar, right?
Yeah.
Any of those situations, you definitely want to get some guidance and reach out. And we're here for you guys. Give this video a like, and we will see you on Friday.
Right.
All right. Bye. Have a good day. Bye.